Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We're just going to wait a couple of seconds for people to get comfortable and sign in, and then we will get started. Great. So I can see lots of you joining us this afternoon, which is fantastic. Let me start by saying welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking the time out of your afternoon to join us for this session today, as we take a look at our new active ageing report, Life in Our Years, supported by eGYM. Very shortly, I'm going to pass you over to our panel and our authors who are going to take you through the report. But just before I do, let me introduce myself. So I am Emma Thomas. I'm one of the membership experience managers here at UK Active, and I've got the pleasure of hosting and facilitating the session with our panelists today. Just some very quick housekeeping. I won't labour the point. I know we've all done Zoom webinars a million times over the past 18 months, but some very quick housekeeping just to say that everybody's been muted on entry when you arrived here today. So what that does mean is we're not going to be able to hear from you, but what it does also mean is that we can take your questions through the Q&A box, which is in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Please ask away as the session goes on. No questions are off limits today. Any thoughts, any comments, any feedback is all appreciated, and we will get to as many of the questions as we can at the end of the session today. If for whatever reason we get cut off from the session, please do just log back in using the same link that you joined us here on today. And I think that's pretty much it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kenny Butler. Kenny is our strategic lead for health and wellbeing here at UK Active, and he's going to talk to you about what we're going to go through today.
Afternoon, everyone. So there's another show in town other than the football today, and that is our active aging report. As Emma said, my name's Kenny. I'm the strategic lead for health and wellbeing for UK Active. And before I hand over to Alex to talk about some of the research and the findings and recommendations, just wanted to set a bit of context and set the scene really to look at why we are doing this as an industry to get involved in this space. We feel this is a milestone document, and we're looking to evolve professionalism and growth of the sector. So, you know, we know the population is growing older, and we know that this cohort of people are less active than the younger adult. You know, and we know that life expectancy is increasing at the moment, and healthy life expectancy, however, is not. And that's not increasing by the same extent. So that means population's living longer, although the last couple of years is bucking that a little bit. But the latter part of the life is spent in poor health. And that's why us as an industry are getting involved in this and can help this. So, you know, as you can see there, there's almost 12 million of us are over 65 at the moment, and that's expected to reach about 20 million by 2066. And as I said, this cohort is less active than the younger adult. So just wanted to really give you a little bit of context to say, look, we're a sector that drives activity in this country already. Pre-COVID, we get millions per week active, reaching the CMO guidelines. But we're not really engaging with this other cohort of people well, and we can do that much better in a more sustained way if we make the necessary reforms and we're given the right conditions in which to operate, of course. Next slide, please, Emma. Just to give you a few numbers before we get into the meat of the report. I said just now that the older adults are less active, but just to put that into context a little bit, over half of the adults over 55, only half of them completed the recommended 150 minutes of moderate activity per week to classify them as being active. You know, as much as a third complete less than 30 minutes, therefore classified as inactive. So, you know, this has got a considerable impact on social care and adds to the weight of the overstretched NHS, things that you may already know. But what you may not know is currently there's 5 million people waiting for planned treatment, such as knee replacements and hip replacements. They're becoming more inactive. And, on top of that, as we age, prevalence of chronic diseases increases and long-term conditions are higher, mostly preventable as well. And as a result, therefore, a sizable proportion of GP visits, in fact, 50% of GP visits are taken up by this cohort of people and long-term conditions. We can take that out of the NHS a little bit by getting them more active in our spaces. So we got a looming, unreconciled, unresolved crisis around social care and costs associated with the NHS. The overall expenditure is about 7 out of 10 pounds. And that equates, as you see there, about 40% of the local authority spend to an estimated 23 billion. Staggering, mind-numbing numbers. But this is why we need to ensure older adults are supported with all kinds of things, not just physical activity. But when it comes to physical activity, we have spaces in the community to help people be emotionally, physically active, and as a result, lead healthy and independent lives. Next slide, please, Emma. Thank you. So we at UK Active already aligned ourselves and the industry close to this UK government agenda around the industrial strategy, and are involved in these 2 government-backed projects that are linked to the strategy. One with Active Lancs, we're supporting an initiative called Business Health Matters, which delivers health checks in the workplace. And our workforce, you guys, will be supplying that as we scale that throughout the nation. And then people who are having those health checks in the workplace, if they want to be more active, then that comes back into our spaces. Secondly, with Active Stirling, Sport Heritage Scotland and University of Stirling, we're helping older people be digitally connected to our spaces and explore the potential of intergenerational approaches, something that will come up today as well, to physical activity. Thank you, Emma. Next slide, please. Just lastly, before head over to Alex, by timely there, I mean, never before have we been so acutely aware of the implications of being unhealthy and a risk to a virus or a disease until last year. So we've got that on top of our minds. We also know that adults generate only about 1 in 5 in our leisure, 1 in 5 of the leisure centre visits pre-COVID. So from our insight and research, there appears to be an appetite for diversification to look for these new markets. There seems to be a want and a desire to get involved in this active aging cohort and space. So what I'd like to say here in this slide is just to say that, look, there are commercial opportunities here, and it's estimated that over 50s hold 70% of the wealth. So there's that commercial opportunity. On the flip side, there's health inequity. And, we have opportunities to link the sector to healthcare pathways to help the more vulnerable as well. So there's a couple of pathways we can really shoot for and hit people with our offerings. And that word offerings is going to come up in a moment. But enough for me. I think maybe we should talk about the reason why we're here, and that's the report that is released today. And I would like to hand over to Alex to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kenny. So as Kenny has already sort of outlined, clearly there's a great need for this report and to understand and really look at the ways that the sector does and can support older adults to be active. And so there's a great need for it right across our sector. And so from a research perspective, there's actually been lots of research done previously that explores the kind of the barriers and the challenges for older adults to be active. But what hasn't been done and where we felt the gap was and what we tried to fill it with this research is how our sector specifically can support those older adults what they're currently doing, and what do those older adults actually want from the kind of offerings that the sector are providing. And so we undertook this project, which we believe is one of the most comprehensive research projects to date across the sector exploring these areas. And I'll just, before I go into some of the key themes and recommendations that came out of the report, I just want to run you quickly through the research process that we undertook. So next slide, please, Emma. So we had three key aims to this research, as you can see on the screen here. And the first and foremost was to determine the sector's offer to support adults, older adults, here defined as those over the age of 55 to be physically active. So that was one of the key aims of this piece of work. But we also wanted to actually gain insight from the older adults themselves, the end users of the offerings and of the whole point of this research, to understand the extent to which these offerings are meeting their needs and what they might like to see as part of the offerings. And this includes any changes that have come about as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, we conducted this research in the middle of the pandemic. Pandemic has had a huge influence on the health of our population, and thus it wasn't an area that we could ignore. So we covered that as well. And finally, to produce recommendations for the sector to look at ways that we can support not just the maintaining and the improving, but also kind of the extending of these physical activity offerings for older adults, and kind of contribute to physical activity participation for older adults as well. And next slide, please, Emma. And so the diagram here just shows the process that we undertook as part of this research. And we wanted to capture data from across the entire sector, the sector in its broadest sense. And because we know that there's some really fantastic work that's going on there, and we wanted to understand the breadth of it. And so we did an open call to the sector, and that was in about November, December time. We got a very good response, around 124 full case study submissions from across the sector. And as Kenny has already mentioned, we called these offerings, and you hear us refer to it throughout this presentation and throughout the report as well. And we've used this term to really capture the breadth of the submissions received. So we had, for example, submissions from, leisure operators providing interventions or activities as part of memberships, through to training providers working to support older adults to be active, and equipment suppliers. So a real breadth there. So this is a way to be able to kind of capture all of that information under the terms offerings. So I'll stay on that slide for a sec. So the submissions came in, and they were then reviewed and put in a format to share with older adults. And this kind of element of co-design and co-production with the older adults was a really important part of this project. And so we sent them the case studies out to review against a criteria that we'd set to understand those aspects of what they liked and what they didn't like, and the areas of the offerings they would engage in or not. And this review of the case studies was combined with a number of focus groups. So we did 5-hour-long focus groups with a subsample of those older adults who completed some of the case study reviews, and used a qualitative approach called nominal group technique, which is a particular approach that pulls on the expertise of the end users, so in this case the older adults, to both identify problems and develop solutions. And here, this is where the recommendations have been pulled from a collective analysis of this data that was done using an analysis approach called hierarchical content analysis, which pulls out the most prominent and reoccurring themes in the data. So from this, we have then developed this report and pulled out six key themes, all with sub-themes, and from there 9 recommendations, and that's what I will take you through now. Okay, next slide, please. Next one. So as I've mentioned, 6 key themes that came out, as you can see listed there on the slide, so I'll take you through each of them. Next slide, please. So the first one is accessibility. And when we're referring to accessibility here, we're referring to older adults' ability to access the offering in whatever form it might be through the sub-themes that are shown there on the slide. So the first one is flexibility and range of offerings. A second is frequency of offerings. And third is timing and booking options. So if we kind of run through this in just a little bit more detail, where there tended to be opportunities where there was a wider range of offerings, they were flexible in kind of their approach around how they were delivered, at what times they were delivered, how frequently they were delivered, and that they had various booking options available, both, say, for example, in person, on the phone, or online booking options. This made the offerings much more accessible to the older adults and actually improved the chances of them reattending or attending in the first place. So based on this theme, we developed first recommendation. And next slide, please. Which is to ensure that any offering is made easy and accessible. And one of the key pieces of information that came out here was utilizing customer feedback to make necessary adaptations to schedulings so that it fits the needs of all of the older adults. And specifically, accessibility, or older adults felt that accessibility could be supported through ensuring that offerings could be booked in various ways and distributing offerings throughout the day to support both working and retiring adults. Now, a second theme that came out of this particular area was specifically looking at what the types of offerings targeted. And older adults noted, particularly as a result, I think, of the pandemic and the impact that that has had on the amount of activity that they were able to take part in, is that a focus on strength in order to maintain that independence, allow them to continue those activities of daily living, was extremely important. And so the second recommendation there is to engage older adults in offerings that both maintain and build strength as part of maintaining that independence. Next slide, please. So the second theme is atmosphere, and by atmosphere, we're talking about the kind of feeling that is received when someone attends an offering. And there were three key areas that built atmosphere and were seen as positive things that contributed towards an atmosphere. And that was a sense of welcome and comfort, a sense of feeling like you belonged and you were included, and also facility upkeep, where facilities were kept in kind of good working conditions, and therefore older adults felt safe and confident to use the equipment or the facilities. And so as a result, our third recommendation is associated to maintaining and building atmosphere. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, creating and building atmosphere, and aware that, you know, different offerings will have different kind of atmospheres associated to them. So we recommend to both look to build and maintain those feelings of welcoming and inclusion in the atmosphere, as this was shown based on what older adults told us, to increase the likelihood that they will re-attend those offerings in the future, and also to build that customer confidence. And specifically through kind of that fostering of the sense of community and belonging, which could be done through building rapport between the workforce and the customers, the older adults themselves, and then maintaining those high standards of safety by keeping equipment, promotional materials up to date and in clean and good working order. Next slide. Our third theme relates to socializing, and actually this was a really big theme that came out for older adults, that they saw socializing as a key opportunity. They saw taking part in physical activity offerings as a key opportunity for socializing, and that was actually a really big factor that drove them back to wanting to reattend. And there's three elements of socializing sub-themes there. The first is that the opportunity to have socializing aspects in an offering provides a sense of a camaraderie, and that in itself increased the likelihood of the older adult wanting to reattend. It also increased the feeling of enjoyment, and as alluded to just there, it was actually seen as something integral to offerings and activities and facilities, that this is sort of something that older adults would really like to see becoming a more frequent thing in offerings where possible. Next slide, please. So the recommendation here is plain and simple, is to make it social where possible. Offerings should look to maintain and increase those opportunities for socializing for older adults. And that's because they can support the physical, mental and social health of them, improves the experience and can drive them to reattend. Next slide. So our next theme focuses on instructors, and we've used the term instructors, but by this we're referring to anyone who instructs or leads an offering in whatever form that may be. And instructors were seen as kind of a key individual who could influence not just kind of the experience, well, yes, the experience within the class and the kind of the offering or the atmosphere that was developed. And that influenced attendance and kind of perception of the offering in three different ways. So firstly, the knowledge that an instructor had, particularly around technical skill and the knowledge of health and different kind of health conditions and how to adapt exercises based on the health need, was seen as extremely valuable. And older adults were much likely to attend an offering or re-attend an offering or engage with an instructor if they felt that they had that knowledge. Second was the attention and the feedback provided. And this related a little bit in with kind of size of offering and size and the amount of other people that were in the offering at the same time, whereby they felt that it was extremely important to have that attention paid to, say, particularly technique, and get the feedback in order to help them kind of progress and make changes through their fitness journey and reach fitness goals. And the final one was communicational and interpersonal skills, and the fact that if an instructor didn't have the ability to accurately kind of communicate information, either say through providing attention or having that kind of technical knowledge, or didn't have kind of interpersonal skills that built that sort of rapport with the older adult and made them feel welcomed and included, then they were unlikely to re-attend the offering. So instructors could have a really big impact on whether older adults decide to come back to re-attend offerings or not. Next slide. And so our recommendation here is to prepare the workforce and to ensure that the workforce have those people skills to be able to deliver those high quality offerings that older adults were wanting and spoke to us about, and to make that specific to their health needs and activity needs. And that this kind of training of the workforce could specifically focus on building those communication and interpersonal skills, and where possible, making sure that the workforce are kind of assessed against relevant standards for working with older adults and those with long-term health conditions, just to make sure that they're enabled and able to cater to the needs of those individuals. Next slide, please. Our next theme focuses on categorization and promotion, and this is all about the way that a offering has been promoted and advertised. And there were three key sub-themes that related to this. The first was categorization by ability, not age. Categorization by age was seen quite negatively by the older adults that we spoke to, and actually was considered to be something that would put them off attending a class or an offering, whatever it may be. The second was to ensure transparent communication about what an offering included and the ability level it was suited for. And finally, to promote and encourage intergenerational mixing, which Kenny did touch on earlier. And that aspect of intergenerational mixing was seen as quite valuable and help support motivation for older adults. And so our theme, our recommendation associated to this theme is to make offerings ability specific instead of focusing on age, focusing on ability and intensity, and to make communication and promotion of what the offering includes and the ability level it's targeted at extremely clear, and within that promote and advertise intergenerational mixing as a way of supporting that kind of motivation for older adults, but also for younger adults as well. Next slide. So now we come to our sixth and final theme, which was looking at the longer term support for health following the COVID-19 pandemic. And so older adults here were asked specifically what they felt the sector could do to support their health in the long term following the pandemic. And these were the four key themes that came out. The first was improving accessibility, and by accessibility referring back to the areas that I touched upon in that first theme, so frequency of classes, range or offerings, a range of offerings and kind of booking options. The second was building confidence through reintroduction to fitness, and quite a number stated that because of having such an extended period of time out of, say, using particular facilities or attending certain offerings, a reintroduction into that and into understanding what now suited their exercise needs and goals would be really useful. Thirdly was actively supporting integrated healthcare systems. There was kind of overwhelming support from the older adults that we spoke to that saw the kind of the importance and the benefit of the sector being kind of closely connected to other healthcare systems, whether that's kind of local GP services, social prescribing, exercise referral. And the final is continuing digital offerings. This was an aspect that older adults found really useful throughout the pandemic. They very much enjoyed the digital offerings that were that allowed them to still maintain a level of activity while we were in lockdown. And so our recommendation associated to this one is to build in that post-pandemic support, and to do that in the ways that have been mentioned through induction or taster sessions, in supporting the physical rehabilitation of older adults from the pandemic where relevant, and to continue digital offerings alongside that impersonal delivery as part of an ongoing kind of hybrid approach. Next slide, please. So that wraps up the 6 themes that emerged from the report. And just to say here before I pass over to Kenny, that this is by no means the end of the road. This is the beginning of the story when it comes to understanding what the sector can do to support older adults and the research associated to this area. And so we do have a research recommendation associated to kind of continuing to extend the evidence base around this topic area. And this is in order to kind of support the refinement and the development of offerings for older adults. We recommend that future research build upon the recommendations and the findings from this report, and specifically focus on potentially investigating best practice evaluation framework to make sure that there's consistent capture of evidence across the sector, measuring the impact of these recommendations that are presented in this report, and finally, continuing to involve participants in a key part of research development, because they are the ones that tell us exactly what they need. And on that note, I will hand back over to Kenny.
Thanks, Alex. Solid research, solid recommendations. Hopefully, people are saying, "Oh, I'm doing some of that," or can take on a few things and say, "I might do a bit better with that." So yeah, solid research. A couple of things for me first. One is, if you've got any questions, please fire them in the box. I see 1 or 2 trickling through there. And secondly, I will introduce Kirsten in a moment from eGYM. But just to tee that up, as you heard Alex say, strength was a big thing that came out of this report. And it's been tagged as being an unforgotten guideline this year by Chartered Society of Physiotherapy and Sport England. And us are getting involved in that as well, trying to sort of get that guideline back on track. It's a relatively new guideline where people should be doing something for strength twice a week. And that's working out big muscles like hips, knees, backs, shoulders. And that's an area that eGYM know well. And I want to first of all say big thanks for them to supporting this report. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to do this. I just wanted to give Kirsten some airtime there now, just to sort of say a little bit about some extraordinary cohort of people that they've been able to monitor and look at strength gains. But I just want her to give you a bit of a background on her and eGYM and that big data. Kirsten, are you there? I know your camera's not working.
Can you hear me, Kenny?
Yes, I can hear
Wonderful. At least you can hear me. So yeah, I will keep it quick to get to this kind of very interesting data you have researched on for us. And just for people who don't know eGYM, I want to give you a brief kind of overview who we are and what we have done to support this insightful piece of work. So eGYM is a global fitness technology leader that provides fitness and health facilities with intelligent workout solutions built on connected gym equipment and software. And we started with smart strengths and a decade ago, and that has evolved into a fitness ecosystem built around facilities that want to offer members a workout experience that connects the dots between exercise and health goals. And you can find our solution in over 2,000 gyms worldwide, and around 500,000 users are using monthly our products. And so we are proud, like, with this data, that we could support this incredibly important and insightful piece of work with our data. Do you want to actually move to that slide, Kenny, or is that something kind of like, Alex?
There, as if by magic.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much. So as part of the collaboration, we provided the collected data from almost 250,000 55 plus eGYM Smart Strengths users, which have been independently analyzed by the UK Active Research Institute. And it shows the positive impact the resistance training has on muscular strengths in older adults. These participants kind of have been engaged in an automated smart strengths equipment training, which included regular strengths testing and progressive training adapting over the time. And how you can see here, almost 250,000 users over 55 showed substantially increase in strength with maintaining occurring over time. This is a solid dotted orange line, the solid orange line, in contrast to the expected decrease in strength that would happen with aging. This is this dotted line. And we think this is an incredible outcome.
Huge numbers.
Yeah.
Huge numbers. And that gap that we see there is pretty significant. Dotted line without strength, solid line with strength training. So, this is the opportunity that the sector has to engage with that unforgotten guideline, engage with people more socially, all these recommendations. Thank you very much, Kirsten. That is really is what we call big data, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
Kirsten's going to stick around as well for some Q&As, but I'd like to get there in a moment. Just to clue up and sort of say to people what's next after this. As Alex said, this is the first one off the shelf, so we would love to be able to do something next year to find out what people have been implementing. Emma, if you could go to the what's next slide, that'd be great. We are an engine of activity. Gyms, pools, and leisure centers already play a big role and can play a bigger role by digesting this important and constructive feedback within the report on this target audience that we should be engaging with and why they'd use our facilities more. And we need to find that out. Secondly, I think, as I said, there's an opportunity to drive development and strong, irreversible partnerships with health agencies like the NHS. Last year increased the profile of our essential services that we provide, showcasing, a breadth of programs that have a direct role on people's physical and mental health and social well-being as well. So this report and the adoption of the recommendations can become a catalyst to develop pathways, as I was saying earlier, from GPs, from allied health professionals like physios, to these facilities. And then from what we're hearing, an agenda that's has overwhelming support from the older people who contributed to this report. So it's now pretty important that we take the learnings, bring them to life, move them off the page, move them off the pages they're written on and into the thousands of gyms, pools, leisure centers that exist within every community. We are working with partners across the sector, developing those pathways as well for health and that wider health community. So yeah, we encourage you to take these recommendations, encourage you to just give us some feedback on this as well. But let's have a chat. Let's have a bit of Q&A if people want to throw some questions in there. And I might just hand back to Emma to facilitate that if she could.
Certainly can, Kenny. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the, there's so much information rich in there, and I was just listening away and making the link between something that I saw on the news this morning, which was around loneliness in older adults and the link there. And actually, you know, they were saying that it, again, wasn't anything new, but loneliness is killing more people than smoking these days, and particularly off the back of the pandemic. And actually, you know, bridging that gap between, we've got this loneliness epidemic now and what we could potentially facilitate within our spaces and in our sector around this for older adults could be really powerful. So loads of key takeaways, loads of golden nuggets. Would like to just digest it, I think, and mull those recommendations over when I read the report later on. So thank you both. We've had a few questions through. Please, if you've got other questions that you've been thinking of as you've been sitting and listening, do type them in the box now, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can. One question that came through, for the purpose of this report, I think this is one for you, Kenny, but for the purpose of this report, what are we classing as an older adult? What age?
Well, I might pass back to Alex on that one, because I think that came up last week as well. So
It did.
Yeah.
Yes, so for the purpose of this report, we went by the definition and the terminology used by Sport England and the government framework around over 55 as an older adult. But when we talk about older adults that took part in the study, we had a range of individuals from ages 55 to 90, and some of the themes that I spoke through, they weren't necessarily they didn't necessarily differ by the age spectrum across that range, so they were all very similar. Even if, you know, an older adult was 55 versus 90, those themes were the prominent ones that came across for all of them. So yes, 55 plus.
Great, okay. And then Kevin's made a really good point. I think this is to do with the categorization recommendation. So if older adults are telling us that they don't want to be categorized by age, did they give any indication as to how they would like the sessions described, or how they might, you know, recognize that session is something that was suitable for them? Did they give any more detail? If it's not age description, what is the alternative?
Yeah, absolutely. They did, and there are plenty more kind of examples highlighting this theme and other themes in the report. Obviously, we had to only give you a snapshot here, but one of the key themes that came out for older adults around categorization by age was to instead do it by ability or intensity. So a few examples that older adults it gave was potentially categorizing by level of intensity. I think one lady said in the facility that she goes to, they use a traffic light system where red means intense, you know, and green means kind of less intense. And then based on that, she could determine which class or which offering to go to based on what the level of workout that she wanted to do. So as that alluded to in that recommendation, and giving that clear information about what the session targets, or what the offering is targeting, what's it aiming to achieve, is it focusing on flexibility, is it focusing on strength, and the ability level as well. And then the older adults felt that they could make those informed decisions about if the offering would be appropriate for them or not.
Okay, great. This next question's come through from David Connell, and it's an absolute cracker. So 53% of older adults achieve the Chief Medical Officer's guidelines on activity, but there's an intimation that that's not enough. We want to target that, we want to improve that. Do we have any idea what percentage would be classed as good? And are there other countries that are doing this significantly better? And if so, what can we learn from them?
Well, I think your dog has an answer for that. I wonder what the dog's saying. That's an interesting question, a good one. So, based on people going from nothing to something has huge benefits. Having marginal gains in that percentage is going to be massive. So I don't know what that target would be, if there's a governmental target on that or not. Guys, if you have any idea on that target. So, getting those marginal gains is going to have huge benefits to people's independence, just by because physical inactivity is the greatest predictor, one of the greatest predictors of disability in older adults. So you're able to sort of tweak that, then you're going to have some kind of benefit. So bringing that up 10, 15% is what I would estimate. But I haven't seen any documents on what that target would be.
I think my dog agreed, 15%.
Really? Good.
Marginal gains, okay. We've had a couple of questions about where people can access the report. So the report is now live on the UK Active website for you to download. We'll share the link to that after the session today with everybody that's joined us today. We also have recorded the session today as well, so there will be a link to be able to watch this back, share with colleagues as well. Let's see, what else have we got? Great report. Kevin's made a comment about a great report to be able to use locally. What is the plan from UK Active to be able to publicise this on a national level with public health, NHS colleagues?
Yeah, I can probably take that one, Emma. So this is all about edging toward government around a bigger conversation. So we're obviously just committing to a robust research-led, evidence-based interventions within our sector. We're looking inward and trying to help shift that dial by engaging the older adult and helping our sector do that better. What's next is, we recognize that government's got to focus on healthy aging, independent of all the stuff that's going on at the moment. So we feel that this is an inward look after our first report called Reimagining Aging, which highlighted the problem. This is giving some recommendations. Next time, we would like to be able to build on that platform, to scale some interventions that are within our sector, to have real global population health effects on people's activity levels and independence. So what we're trying to do is help the government with their industrial strategy, which is trying to increase that 5 extra healthy years. And that this is our commitment as a sector to sort of develop that long-term relationship with NHS and government and PHE and health think tanks and aging think tanks like Centre for Aging Better, where we have mature conversations. So I think that will give you a little bit of a taster of where we're going.
Well, okay. A couple of other really interesting questions that have come through. I think this one might be for yourself, Alex, but are the recommendations the same for both men and women? Julie's commented here around historically, they've often found it a little bit harder to reach men. So are there any differences, or were there any notable differences when you were going through the research process between men and women?
No, so the themes pretty much were consistent across the genders, across men and women. I suppose the The only kind of notable difference which we might expect is that where women were more likely to talk about attending kind of offerings that were maybe more group activity based, and men slightly less likely to talk about that. However, the sort of needs that came out were the same. It was fundamentally a focus on the need of the individual, and whether that's targeting viability, focusing on their particular fitness goal. It was about having that sort of need addressed, and being kind of valued as an individual. So feeding into that kind of welcoming atmosphere, that feeling of belonging, inclusion, definitely ran through strongly for all individuals. So I think that that's probably like a key takeaway here, that if you manage to engage the individual as themselves and understand their needs, the kind of the gender aspect, I think it seems to matter a little bit less. That's what was sort of came through in this research.
Interesting. It's interesting, definitely. Another one here, again, this has come through from Shelley. Historically, level of qualification has played a huge factor when programming effectively. So is this also an opportunity to reflect on what is really essential in coaches, activators, instructors to create the atmosphere and longevity support required in this report, particularly now when the sector may struggle to recruit? I think it's a really timely one, isn't it? Any thoughts or comments around that one?
Well, we saw instructors come out there, of course, as a recommendation, and look at that instructors' skill set, etc. Currently, I think it's a level 3 for supervision, as a general level 3 for supervision, and an exercise referral standard for instruction. But where there's no, workforce always comes up. We're working hard with SIMSPA at the moment, where there's no clinical exercise prescription requirements, i.e. no red flags or reasons for exercises to be modified, then this shouldn't create any challenges for any qualified fitness professionals. This could be as simple as a level 2 gym instructor helping someone around a gym, showing them around a gym as a basic introduction. For any more personalized programming, standard level 3s would be needed. So, where there are more clinical considerations, that's where we're working with SIMSPA, which is the Chartered Institute for the Management of Sport and Physical Activity, by the way, if people don't know that acronym, and NHS England and people like that, to agree minimum requirements for people coming in from pathways like social prescribing. This might include GP referral or level 4s. But going forward, I would expect to see these qualifications come into the market that align to the long-term medical conditions professional standard published by SIMSPA last year. And I know there's several organizations doing that as well. So, from a governance perspective, we're working closely with them to push for individual fitness professionals to hold that membership, meaning that they get that recognized qualification and they also have that annual CPD requirement. So there's lots of work in the background on that one.
Yeah. And just to add to that, obviously building on the recommendation in the report, as Kenny's spoken about, it's one of the key aspects that came out there was having that kind of understanding of those common health conditions. So activities, exercises, offerings could be adapted for the specific needs of the individual, but also that aspect of the communication and the interpersonal skills. So I think it would be the same for many of us when we attend an offering or we do something that's led by anyone. The personality and the engagement of the person does matter, and those individuals that manage to create that atmosphere and create that that great feeling for the people attending are the ones that will probably have the most popular classes, or offerings, or be seeing the most people attend. So I think it's just a note there as well that for the older adults that we spoke to, that really can make a difference, that the kind of the personality on the communication and interpersonal skills of the instructors. And so that might be something that we see in as part of kind of standards and qualifications going forward as well.
Kirsten, I see a question coming in about people gathering around a cuppa. do you see people sort of getting around your equipment, having a bit of banter, a bit of discussion, and enjoying that social aspect of that 250,000 people that were you guys were analyzing? You know, there must be a social aspect to this equipment because of the proximity of people. Say, oh, you're on mute, I think.
No, there is a huge social aspect, like, you know, to train in a group, like, you know, or not in a group, but like, you know, in a circuit situation, yeah, where you don't need to look at, like, you know, your weight or kind of your seat height, where everything is automated, right? Like, you know, where you have a clear structure, and of course, people enjoying to have an effective training, and then to sit together and talk about their results and their bioage and things like that. It's a quite nice connector, especially over age groups, not only for older, also for younger, because there, you know, you don't compare yourself, right? Because it's not visible what you move. So the intimacy is taken away from these people. And this is what they appreciate. Yeah, that is so easy to use with the gamification. And this is what they enjoy. And I think it's important that people have fun when they work out. Yeah, because then they are successful.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of links back in really nicely to the themes that came out of that section, that enjoyment part and the intergenerational mixing. You know, older adults wanted to mix with individuals of different ages, and the socialization was a key opportunity for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Kirsten. We can't underestimate the value of that social aspect in our spaces, even if they come to our centers as a point for meeting to go for a walk. At least, you know, there might be a cup of coffee and a cake or something like that in the space. And a lot of these places do have those facilities. And they look at the timetable and say, this is not such a scary place. So, you know, we need to probably think a little laterally about getting people around our facilities, edging them into the facilities, and break down some of the perceptions that are out there at the moment. And on perceptions and barriers, we didn't go into barriers with this report that much, because those barriers have been fairly well documented. And we're not claiming to be experts on barriers to physical activity for the older cohort, but we do know there has been quite a lot of work by Age UK, et cetera, on that. And we wanted to just take this to another level to say, here's some recommendations, next steps are scale. You know, we need to stop talking about only barriers and talking about interventions that could be scaled to have population health effects.
Definitely. Kenny, I think we've got through most of our questions there. Unless anybody's got anything that they would like to add, or any final comments, we're finishing 7 minutes ahead of time, so go and make yourselves a cup of tea. Kenny, did you want to say anything before we kind of wrap up?
No, I think we said it all, but engage with us on this. Take the recommendations, have a read, implement them if you're not already doing this. If you're already doing this and you're doing an outstanding job, we want to hear about that as well. If we didn't hear from you on the report research already, you know, the type of data that Kirsten and eGYM are capturing, for instance, that speaks volumes to healthcare pathways and commissioners as well. You know, look at the strength gains that we've maintained with these people. You know, that those are the types of things that we need to shout about. And I know you guys are doing it very well out there. I know there's excellent examples out there. We just need to highlight those a bit more and bring that out to the surface. So, you know, keep on engaging with this older cohort if you are, and if you're not, we will love to help you out with that, because that's what we're trying to do, linking the industry to healthcare. And, you know, flying that flag and say, we are a viable solution.
Mm-hmm. I think what we can do, Kenny, is just by way of collecting some of that feedback, collecting some of those golden nuggets that you've taken away today that you're going to implement or expand because you're already doing it back in your business. When we send that follow-up email, we'll just provide an email address. And if you've got feedback or comments, or, you know, I've read the report and this section just lit me up and I'm going to go away and implement this in my business, like that's what we want to hear about. So please, like, your feedback's really, really important to us. So yes, if you've got comments that you wish to make, please do keep in touch with us, engage with us, like Kenny says, and we'll provide that mechanism through the email follow-up this afternoon, if that's okay.
And I just
Absolutely.
popped the link. Sorry, Alex, I just popped the link into the chat before you make that comment. So for people, if they want to download that link.
I was just going to add just a bit onto the end. Emma mentioned there. I mean, it helps with the research as well. We, in order to kind of further research in this area and continue the research, we'd love to get that feedback and to understand what else is maybe needed, what's missing, where do we go from here. So I think you can all be kind of active contributors into the next stage of the research as well. And I can just see that someone had popped in the Q&A about integrating some of these key recommendations across the sector. How can we seek to do that? And I think just a last point about the recommendations here is that we realize that everyone will be on different stages of their journeys, and some recommendations may be more suitable or appropriate than others, and everyone will be looking to implement the recommendations in slightly different ways, which is why they have been developed and kind of framed the way that they have. And so we would obviously love to understand all of the different ways in which the recommendations have worked or have not worked as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Kirsten, for joining us and providing your insight as well. Thank you, Kenny and Alex, for talking us through this wonderful report. I will let you go. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy days to join us to talk through the report, and we will see you and speak to you all very soon. Thanks again.